Hey people, beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna do a crazy honest recap of 2020, which is something I started doing in 2019, and a lot of people really enjoyed it and said, hey, can you do that shit again? And I said, hey, yes I can. The idea for this video started with a tweet that I saw trending last year, and I was really glad it was trending because I find it a very important tweet. It says, I know we're in the yearly recap phase on social media and everyone is announcing their biggest wins, but please don't compare yourself and your progress to others. And then a friend of mine, Diani, reposted it, and she said also, you're not going to see people post their worst moments or even their regular moments. You have no idea what actually goes on in people's lives. Social media is heavily curated, mine included. A word. In response to that, I was like, you know what? Let me do the opposite. Let me give you a crazy honest recap of everything that made my year difficult and everything that you maybe didn't see on my social media, which is also heavily curated. I personally feel that I have a social responsibility to anyone watching my process to give them a fuller picture. I hope to make this a tradition, something that I'm gonna do every year, and I hope maybe some other people will start doing it too, so let's do it. Okay, I started 2020 in an illusion. New year, everything's different. Anything that was heavy on me before is light on me now. Anything that challenged me before is a piece of cake now because I flipped a page on the calendar. I knew that 2019 was hard. I knew why it was hard, and I knew that I needed a new motto that would help keep me afloat. And so I developed this motto, collect, don't expect, and I applied that to a lot of things: happiness, peace, joy, connection. Collect those things, don't expect those things. So I got to strategizing. I started allocating time and money and my personal resources to things that would allow me to collect my happiness, my peace, my connection, all of that stuff. For example, I put a line item on my budget for scootering, and I would wake up at 5 in the morning and go ride the scooters around the streets when no one was in them, and that shit was healing. It was good for me. I would go hang out at the parks that had a surplus of iguanas and lizards because I don't know why, but those are my people. I even cut little strands on the front of my hair because I was so sure that every bitch that had those was living good. AKA illusion, AKA delusion. I was riding the wave of this illusion for a few months until pretty much March when coronavirus hit. And what's funny is that I don't remember the dates of like, oh, when we started dating, or oh, when you broke up with me, but I definitely remember the date clear as day when they took the Lyft scooters off the streets of Miami for coronavirus, because
that was true heartbreak for me.
And not because I'm obsessed with scooters, but because it was symbolic to me of the fact that I could really work to build flawless, invincible, sustainable plans, and they are still easily threatened by threats that I cannot anticipate. Miami just filled my life with data points that support that. I thought I finally got to a place where this plan, this brilliant, colorful plan, could not be threatened, and I was wrong. And I have to say, the next 4 or 5 months of 2020, basically a giant showcase of all the ways that the world could threaten my plans that I was so sure were sustainable and invincible. So yeah, coronavirus got me panicking. People in Miami feel very invincible to natural disasters, global pandemics. I was worried. I was worried about not having health insurance. I was worried about taxes. I was worried about income. I needed a plan to cope with all of that. And I was like, you know what? If I can't build a business or help my mental health, let's do something else productive, Hallie. Find a man. So I got on Hinge. I did a Hinge binge. I met some cool guys that definitely got less cool as time went on. One guy waited 2 weeks to tell me that I remind him of this grime grunge something female rap artist from the UK. I was like, that sounds cool. And then he sent me a side-by-side and I was like, okay, that shit's not cool. Gotta go. Another guy, we agreed to do portraits of each other. Obviously I got my feelings hurt once again with this side-by-side. A third guy told me Myers-Briggs is for slow people. That shit's offensive as he's definitely 100% censor, so gotta go. This last guy told me that he's surprised I've ever met a Nigerian person, and I was like, yeah, this is not working for me. This is a bad plan. I am not collecting happiness, peace, or joy here. I am collecting opportunities to get my feelings hurt, so gotta go. Then I implemented my greatest plan yet. I'm gonna start a project called Happy Hour, where I spend an hour a day doing a different project to collect at least an hour worth of happiness. And I did some really cool things. I did a giant life-size artistic, I guess, portrait of myself, sewed some clothes. I did a data analysis on a bunch of men's Hinge profiles. I made a giant sunset mural out of sticky notes. I did a lot of cool shit, and it was working for me, and I was like, this cannot be threatened like your last 10 plans. And I was like, yes. And then my roommate made the decision, instead of quarantining at her boyfriend's house, her boyfriend, and her 2 dogs were gonna quarantine in our apartment. And I was like, I cannot film. We're all morning people. The house is too loud, and I definitely just cannot film with people home. It's just like, it's just a limitation that I respect. Now I'm in a position where Miami is too hot, the house is too loud, and I don't have the space or privacy to maintain any amount of okayness. Back my first 2 years in Miami, my counselor diagnosed me with PTSD, and she said that's what PTSD is, when you have to live on edge all the time because you never know where the next threat or the next attack is coming from. And that is exactly how I felt in this situation, not because the people were inherently threatening, but because there were so many things that were posing a threat, and new threats revealing themselves every day, threatening the entire infrastructure of my okayness. And I was like, welcome PTSD, welcome back. It's been a while, friend. You're a bad friend. I'm literally just not okay. I guess I just have to accept that I'm not okay and I'm not gonna be okay, and just do the whole like, oh, this too shall pass thing. I took every blanket I owned and a whole lot of duct tape. I duct taped my blankets over my giant, beautiful glass floor to ceiling windows that I loved so much because it was too hot and too bright, and I was so deep in a hopeless seasonal depression times everything else that literally all I could do was sit in the dark and hope that I could go numb enough that the time would pass and I would get out of this somehow. And I would just sit in my room, my dark room, like sobbing for hours a day, days a week, weeks a month, until 6 or 7 p.m. when the sun would start to set and it would cool down maybe a degree. I would walk across the street, go up on the Target parking garage, and I would just grieve. Walk probably 4 miles back and forth, laps around the Target parking garage, sobbing, dude, sobbing. Just sitting as a broken human in a broken shopping cart and being like, yeah, this all makes sense. I was so low. I was so low. I actually created a playlist during this part of my year called Zero. It was all of the songs that attempted to rescue me from the absolute depths of despair and pits of hell. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, this shit really gets me upset. I was grieving the loss of my peace, my joy, my stability, my happiness, my connection, my purpose, my direction, everything. And then I was multiplying that times the fact that humanity was feeling that all together, and that shit was just way too heavy for me. I posted myself on the Target parking garage watching the sunset every single day, and I don't know if people thought I was like enjoying the sunset and having a good time, but I want to make clear I definitely wasn't. Like, I was attempting survival up there, and I would leave the Target parking garage and then go right back into my house and onto my balcony, and I would stay out there until probably 3 or 4 in the morning, trying to continue writing a book that I was writing about why our generation has no bandwidth, no mental, emotional, spiritual bandwidth left, and a strategy for our generation. And so every day that I'm writing, I post on social media this cryptic pencil emoji. No one knows I'm writing a book. Ha! Bro, I'm just saying, this is what's going on behind the scenes. I'm trying to write a book that I know I need. I'm trying to write a book that I know our generation needs. And I can't write it because I have no bandwidth. But I'm like, if I can stay out here, maybe I can discipline myself into writing it, and I'll be awake till 4 a.m., which means I'll sleep longer in the day and not be awake when the sun is up. I did that for months in a row. I held on for dear life, and then eventually I moved back to New York. So I go home to New York, and I'm living with my best friend who is a new mom. I'm finally acknowledging a lot of emotions that I have ignored. I'm acknowledging the shame of being absent and putting myself in situations like City Year, or staying in a city that has my bandwidth at 0 and having nothing to contribute to people I love and the important things that are going on in their life. I'm feeling terrible for being an absent aunt for the first year of my niece's life. I'm feeling terrible about all of these things, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to say, Hallie, you finally made it out of the environment that broke you and kept you at 0 bandwidth, so if you blame the environment, then you better and shape up now that you're out of it. Which of course was a strategy that lacked complete and total empathy and gave me no time to heal. I tried to give myself a break and extend some empathy to myself, and the question that was gnawing at my brain was, is this truly an appropriate time to extend empathy, or are you just a lazy little girl? But regardless, I decided to lower the pressure on myself. I did do some cool things while I was there. I made a monochromatic photo of me in a teal bathtub. Cool. I started making birthday cards for more and more people, which at that point was just a project and not a business. I did vision boards with 5-year-olds, which was the coolest thing ever. And I also had a relationship altering experience. Within my first 2 weeks of being home, my sister and I took to the streets, you know, to protest. The manner in which we did and the words that we were using didn't go over well with a number of people that I expected to be part of my homecoming celebration. And we've since cut ties, you know? So not the homecoming I planned, didn't plan on the loss of relationships with family members or community members, didn't plan on any of that being part of my homecoming. So I was like, okay, you know what? New York is not the true homecoming. The true homecoming happens when I returned to Boston. I came back to Boston, metaphorically sent out invitations to this big homecoming, and metaphorically received a lot of RSVPs that said I can't come. A lot of the social fears that I have resurfaced. You should have never moved away. You especially should have never moved away to a city or a scenario that was gonna kill your bandwidth so that you couldn't have over-poured into your relationships back in Boston for 4 years to make sure they were here for you when you came back. And I attributed all of my loneliness and all of my lack of connection to myself and to what I did wrong. I did not attribute any of my loneliness or lack of connection to the fact that we're in a global motherfucking pandemic or that everyone else is struggling to have bandwidth just like me. I blamed myself fully and completely. But I was like, you know what? I know who will RSVP to this homecoming celebration. The man that I still haven't found. I just gotta find him. And I always knew he didn't live in Miami. He was definitely from Boston, duh. So we get back into the delusions. Hinge Binge 2020 part 2. I did meet one guy. I did see him a few times safely, obviously. He was an extrovert. So I was like, I already know you're not the one. I just know what I know, and I know that I know this. And I figured maybe that was his fatal flaw that I would have to accept and get over. And so I was like, okay, I'll work on it. And the thing is, he was of age and of a certain level of seriousness for us to be having conversations about the things we really needed to know about each other. We talked about some significant things, and one of them was the implications of having a history of sexual assault. His response to me sharing that information, both in his words and his behavior, reinforced for me a really nasty belief that I know a lot of people who've been through sexual assault hold. A lot of us hold the belief that having a history of sexual assault is our fatal flaw. And that is what will make people not choose us. That is what will make people look at us and be like, nah, I'm good on that. His response reinforced that for me. That shit really was heartbreaking for me, and I wasn't heartbroken over him at all. He was an extrovert. We don't get heartbroken over extroverted boys. No, no. I was just heartbroken over the fact that that happened, you know, and heartbroken over the fact that people do act that way and people do treat people that way. Very sad. But luckily, I also have a strategic sister who always comes with the good advice, and she said to me, at the end of the day, sis, give it 3 to 5 business days and you will be fine. I allowed 3 to 5 business days and I was chilling. After that, life kind of popped off in a good way. A lot of good came from the end of this year. People who follow me on social media got to watch a lot of it. You watched me start a series called Chubby Girl Chat, watched me start a profitable card business, get an investor and get a 3D paper cutter and get inventory, and like, you watched all of that. And a podcast that I am co-creating and co-starring in with a special someone that still hasn't been released. So you're about to watch that. On social media, that all looks really fun and colorful and exciting and intuitive and easy. Like, it's just me doing what I'm meant to do and being good at life. And this is what I mean. I feel a social responsibility to the people watching my process to give them a fuller picture. I just want to be so clear that every single one of these projects is laced with anxiety, laced with fear, laced with concerns, laced with leftover toxic thought patterns and beliefs that I still need to destroy, that still give me a run for my money every time I sit down to just make a Drake card that shits in my head like wing 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 Hallie Hallie Hallie. In conclusion, 2020 was so lit. I'm so badass and I'm so great. And I learned so much and I grew so much. LOL. All right. Bye. See you next time. Bye.